There is a lot of misinformation regarding the legendary Damascus steel. Some of it spread by dishonest knife traders, some by ignorance, and most by those who conform to a certain widely accepted practice of misnaming a material, because a dude in the 19th century did so. My name is Alan, and this is the Sword's Path. So, you surely must have heard of fabled blades made of gazillions of layers of steel, the magical properties of which include spontaneously cutting silk shawls drifting in the air, bouncing off blocks of granite without a dent, and shaving better than Gillette. You'd take two or more different types of steel, hit and squeeze them together, and fold or twist a few times, and voila, you'd be getting a Damascus steel sword, beautifully patterned. Despite my mockery, forge welding is a perfectly legitimate technique of manipulating steel to achieve certain properties. While nowadays it is mostly used for aesthetic reasons, back before modern metallurgy, it could produce something better than products coming out of a medieval blast furnace and finery forge. It is the same legendary technique used to make the most famous katana blades, first forged and folded into pattern-welded billets, and then laminated for soft, ductile back, mune, and hard blade, ha. The initial layering of tamahagane and nabegane worked towards removing impurities and evening out the carbon content, resulting in something that could actually be consistently heat-treated. Similar techniques did evolve independently in many parts of the world, ever since its oldest recorded instance that I could find, around 300 BC in Celtic Germany. Tens or maybe hundreds of pattern types have been developed, such as the simple layered and folded kind, the ladder, the raindrop, the feather, my favorite one, and others, even more exotic ones, refined for greater beauty and originality. But is it in fact Damascus steel? Short answer: no. The problem is, the very term Damascus steel is confusing for many reasons. Over the ages, Damascus has been used to describe crucible steel of Persian type, crucible steel of Indian type, also known as woods, Russian bullet, pattern-welded steel, fagoted wrought iron, gun barrels forge-welded from steel and iron strips, or even non-ferrous makumegane. A close term, Damascene, is even wider. It could refer to all of the above, plus inlaid or overlaid metal goods and even patterned fabrics. The original reference to swords made in Damascus being exceptional in European literature, at least, comes from one Bertrand de la Boquet, a 15th century spy who traveled to the Holy Land and wrote an account of that journey. In his writings he mentions that the Damascus blades are the handsomest and best of all Syria. As to its temper, it is perfect, and I have nowhere seen swords to cut so excellently. To the best of our knowledge, that is the exact sentence from which the term Damascus steel was derived and popularized throughout history. And from all the later sources, including literary and physical ones, we can conclude that the steel that the city of Damascus was famed for was watery patterned, yes, but in fact not a pattern-welded steel. The source of its beautiful texture was not the layering and forge welding of different steel grades. The true Damascus steel of the time was a close cousin of the Indian woods, a crucible steel smelted from pig iron, iron, steel, and various miscellaneous additives: sand, glass, ashes, bone meal, limestone, marble, wood, leather, fruit skins, and various other fluxes and carbon sources. Iron-bearing meteorites could also be used in the production process, adding elements such as nickel, chromium, silicon, vanadium, manganese, molybdenum, niobium, and other elements that would otherwise be unattainable for the smelters of the time. The complicated process had been developing and evolving over the centuries, constantly optimized for greater strength of the product. The finest of medieval crucible steels have been proven to contain carbide nanotubes and nanowires, a result of precise temperature control and pressure and phase transformation and breaking up the grain by forging, in a process that was figured out by trial and error. All of this would result in long layers or tubes of precipitates and concentrated cementite running through the steel, the famous watery or wood grain pattern. Was it the best steel available at the time, however? We cannot be sure. In many places such as Toledo, Iberia, the very quality of the ore resulted in exceptional steel, only further improved by the refining and smelting process. There are accounts of steel said to be from Damascus being brittle or otherwise not as good as Toledan, Indian or Solingen steel from Germany. However, the best surviving specimens of old crucible steel do suggest that the material was of exceptional, even miraculous quality at the time. Is it our true Damascus steel, then? Yes. But was it made at Damascus, Syria? Probably not. The blades themselves were made in the city, that is certain, but the steel itself most likely came in the form of already smelted ingots from the Far East. Analysis of trace elements found in authentic Damascus steel points towards iron ores found in Turkmenistan, Iran, India, or even Sri Lanka. So, to sum up, the true Damascus steel did exhibit watery patterns, was not a pattern-welded steel, and did not actually originate from the city of Damascus. But that knowledge was not always readily available. Due to the whole mystical hocus-pocus surrounding Damascus steel, various marketing ploys utilized by dishonest blade makers, as well as willful ignorance on certain smiths' part, it became widely accepted to call pattern-welded steels Damascus. Even with Polish metallurgy, which always recognized the distinction between damast krystaliczny, crystalline Damascus, and damast skowany, welded Damascus, it was not always clear to the sword-making smiths which was which. The problem escalated especially in 1973 when, at a prestigious knife show, one William Moran, an American knife maker, unveiled several of his pattern-welded blades and called them Damascus steel. The cancerous misnomer spread quickly from that point on and resulted in blasphemous bastardization of the term, casually repeated by pretty much all of the non-scientific internet.
We have arrived, and it is now that we perform our charge. In fealty of the God Emperor, our undying Lord, and by the grace of the Golden Throne, I declare exterminate.
The visual difference between the patterns of woodsy crucible steel and pattern-welded ones is often quite subtle. If we take a piece of wood and compare it to the randomly layered body of folded steel, they look quite similar. True, crystalline Damascus looks more natural, resembling water surface, watered silk or wood grain. Pattern-welded steel can achieve the similar look and many more besides. The contrast is also usually much more profound in pattern-welded blades, but that depends on the depth of the edge. We'll get back to that in a moment. So, if the pattern is something completely unnatural, it's not crystalline Damascus for sure. If it's watery, very fine, irregular, it could be genuine woods or pattern-welded steels, folded many times over. Just to make it clear, performance-wise, in modern times, homogeneous steel beats pattern-welded, and pattern-welded usually beats woods, due to being made of said homogeneous layers. It is just a matter of authenticity and aesthetics I'm discussing here, not quality. Modern steels outperform anything they could make in medieval times anyway. So, true Damascus and pattern-welded Damascus are both legitimate, beautiful materials. But while you can fake crystalline Damascus through pattern welding to an extent, it is also possible to fake pattern welding in a most heinous procedure known as acid etching. To make it clear, both woods and pattern-welded steel need to be etched after polishing to properly bring out the pattern in them. Without that etch, the patterns are sometimes not visible at all to the naked eye, or at least extremely subtle. But etching can also be used to imprint Damascus imitating patterns on the surface of plain, regular steel. Both in woods and pattern welds, the acid will naturally bite deeper into certain structures while leaving others relatively unscathed. This produces a profound, visible texture of alternating light and dark layers. This natural mechanism can be faked, by masking parts of steel with a medium that acid cannot penetrate, such as a nail polish or laser printing toner, for example. This can be used to produce a pattern that is extremely difficult to tell from a genuine one by just looking at it. These fakes usually bear some more or less visible inconsistencies in the pattern that can be spotted by someone familiar with different types of Damascus, but not always. There is, however, a method that is probably obvious to you by now of determining the authenticity of such a piece. In short, you polish a fragment of it down until the pattern is no longer visible. Then, after cleaning up and degreasing the surface, you immerse it in an acidic solution. In Damascus steel or pattern-welded steel, the pattern will re-emerge, while in a fake, the edge will be roughly uniform, leaving just a randomly marked surface. So, I hope this clears things out. For the dessert, let me show you a quick blade that I made some time ago in literally just a few hours. And riddle me this, what is it? Is it crystalline Damascus, pattern-welded Damascus, or maybe, just maybe, is it an etched fake? I'm looking forward to reading your answers and reasoning in the comments.